I do it to Nick. It makes him very uncomfortable.
What do you do to Nick exactly, since we came in at an awkward time?
I tell him to go write me a story, and then I go write me a story.
Oh, okay, you just boss him around. So nobody's shocked about that. All right. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. And as you can see, since it started before Doc was ready, she gives us as much crap before we get on air as she does during. So it's not special. It's just life with Doc. And we all love her for it. But with that being said, today's episode is going to be a fireside chat where a bunch of people with a lot of opinions sit around and pontificate about various topics. Today, because I can assume you can read the title of the episode, we'll be talking about shared worlds. But first, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers. So we're going to start with you, Mel. Can you tell us who you are?
My name's Mel Todd. I'm the author of about 40 books. I have a bunch of stories and anthologies and a couple best-selling series that I'm writing more in. You can find me pretty much everywhere, and I do a lot of cons in the Southeast.
In some circles, saying you're a con artist is a little different, but doing a lot of cons is okay, I guess. Just don't get arrested.
Hey, you
You're
know
too free
what?
for jail.
If I get away with it, that's all that matters.
All right, that's very true. That's very true. So Michael J. Allen would be our next guest, because I let the little Word document sorted by the alphabet, because I can read. Right, Doc? We can read. But Michael, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Sure. I am Michael J. Allen, Star-Lord, crackpot, USA Today best-selling author of science fiction and fantasy.
Okay. And Quincy J. Allen, we never asked, are you two related? You like brothers from another mother or something?
We've chewed some of the same dirt, but we are not related by blood.
Okay. So Quincy, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Quincy J. Allen. I'm a cross-genre author, which means I have ADHD when I get to the keyboard. I've written 10 novels, a whole slew of short fiction all over the place, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, steampunk, mystery, and most of those mixed together. You can find me on Facebook and my website and Amazon, and I'm getting back into the convention game this year. I'll be a dragon. Got my pro status. Can't wait to see Cisca and raise a glass. And I'll probably be hitting a few more conventions. Sort of things have kind of changed in recent months, and so I'm looking forward to it.
Outstanding. And last but not least, we've got Mr. Todd Fonistock. And I'm going to hope that was somewhere close to the right pronunciation. Then we're going to pretend I got it right and plow straight ahead.
You know what? Not only can we pretend that you got it right, but you did get it right. That's exactly how you say it. It's Fonistock. So,
Doc, mark your calendar.
I will. JR managed to get something right.
Well, I'm Todd Fonistock.
He said Allen right twice.
What's that?
I got Allen right twice.
I said JR said Allen right twice.
And yes, he does.
So I'm Todd Fonistock. I write mostly high fantasy. I've got several best-selling series on Amazon, a couple of awards to my name, and about 22 books in print. Like I said, most of those, probably about 18 of them, are epic high fantasy, and then a few one-offs here and there. Time travel novel, a 1988 road trip coming-of-age modern myth story, which really doesn't fall into any category, but I love it still, just the same. That's Summer of the Fetch, and I'm working with Quincy and a couple of other fine people on a shared world epic fantasy project. So that's probably me in a nutshell for the moment. Yes, nice T-shirt there, my friend.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know there was a uniform for this episode.
No, you have to remember.
Since I too have written in shared worlds, Doc is going to take over, and we're going to let her pretend she's the boss today.
Oh, cool.
There's no pretending. I am the boss.
No. Mel told me this morning when we were preparing for this that I was definitely the boss.
No. No. She did not. She would tell you that the person who gets to be my boss is the person who cuts my paycheck.
I'll double your pay. What's twice a zero?
1 second. I got an answer for this.
Are you going to make fun of my math again?
Would I ever make fun of your math? Never.
Yeah,
I will just point out simple facts.
All I got to say is public school math. You can't blame me.
So, today we're going to talk about shared worlds and what that means. And we've brought together a whole bunch of great panelists for that. JR wrote this like wonderful long description. I think by now people understand that fireside chats are we bring together a group of authors. We talk about a concept. Sometimes we bring together fans when we do like stuff about Nick zombie shows. And we can tell I love the zombie shows, can't we? But getting into that, the topic today is shared worlds. And let's first kind of go around with what does it mean to be in a shared world? And then I'll eventually ask you guys what your experiences have been and what those IPs are that you've shared. So, a shared world, is it more than just a co-authored book? Or because traditionally that seems to be what it was, but with indie publishing, it's kind of expanded into this new frontier.
You're not going to call anybody, are you?
I knew that was going to happen.
We'll let Mel go first. I'll play favorites. Mel gets to go first.
Hey.
That's just because I give her free booze. Don't feel bad.
You give me meat too. You give me the meat.
I give you the meat.
I'd have said that different.
I might have too, Quincy. I might have too.
Look, I have a freezer full of really, really good grass-fed beef that she comes over and raids. I give her high-quality meat, not your quality meat.
Oh, that was a shot too. Oh, did my nose? Is it bleeding?
I don't know, but it's a zinger right there.
My hat is off to you, clearly.
So a shared world is basically a world where, I mean, for me, I've worked in shared worlds, it seems like most of my life, since I was a long time table RPG playing, where you created the world as you went, and everybody kind of agreed as to what the rules were and how you interacted with that world. It then expanded for me, at least in fan fiction, where you agreed what rules were there and then how you broke them. Right now, I've got 2 different series that I'm working on where they're shared worlds. One of them is a co-authored series, and the other is a group of, what do we have, 8 other authors. We decided to design a world, and we're just writing all of our stories in the world. And then some very, very long-suffering editors are reading all of our books to make sure that we aren't breaking things that each other did. But that, for me, is what a shared world is. It's deciding that everybody agrees the sky is purple and the sun is green. And the rest of it is what happens in your little part of that shared world.
I'm so glad you didn't say blue and yellow. That made me very happy.
That's boring.
So,
wait, are you telling me the sky isn't purple and the sun isn't? Oh dear.
I'll have 2 of
I have a problem.
All right.
there's some chemistry there that's wrong. So
I would say that
does anybody have anything to add?
Well,
I would
go ahead.
I would say for me, I would say that a shared world requires people other than the IP creator, the intellectual property creator, writing into it. Because from my perspective, if it's a co-authored book in a co-authored universe, I wouldn't consider that a shared world. It's something they created together. For me, it becomes a shared world once other people, other than the creators, the original founders of the world, get involved.
That makes sense, but there's also there are different flavors when you're talking about a shared world. I mean, Mel touched on a couple of them. I mean, you've got where it's 2 or more people who are working sort of equally. You've got, and which like the Eldritch Legacy stuff, that's where we rule by committee, which is an interesting dynamic. You've got one where there's essentially the IP owner who's directing a subordinate. And when I did my work with Mark Allen Adelheit, it was very much that relationship. It was his IP. He brought me in. And we did a lot of good work that way, but I took his marching orders. When I was working with Eikenberry, we were actually working in a shared world that wasn't his, the Four Horsemen universe, but we were working with his characters. So I sort of took marching orders for him, but that was more of a collaborative effort. So you've got all these different kinds of shared world dynamics that changes the flavor every time you do it, really.
Yeah, I would say that the dynamic that you had more with Edelheit was probably more of the classic one that people think of, the one that's more familiar with Tradpub.
Yes.
Do you think indie publishing has made it so that this is a more doable shared world concept?
Absolutely.
This multiple rule by committee thing?
Yeah, I absolutely think it does. Certainly the contracts are easier. And like with Eldros, there hasn't been ego that's really come into it, at least not maybe a couple of times, but for the most part, it's been just the delight of sharing a universe.
Nobody beats your chili, Quincy.
Pardon?
I said nobody beats your chili. So, I don't know. I think we broke Michael. Are you okay, Michael?
I'm just trying to keep my lips together.
So do you have an opinion on what makes a shared world? Would you consider a co-authored book in universe a shared world, or just co-authored as a separate entity?
I'm actually leaning toward your definition. For co-authors, they're both IP holders. For like Eldros or other rule by committees, everybody's an IP holder to a certain extent. I'm not sure how those contracts work for Quincy. But those are two kinds of shared worlds. There's the ego run shared world where one guy's in charge and everybody writes under it, does what they're told, and then there's the co-created everything like Eldros or
even the Four Horsemen.
I would have said there were 3 or 4 types. What was that?
The Four Horsemen is a lot like that. I mean, there's dozens of authors that have written in that, and the way, I mean, they actually own their short stories. They just can't write anything more without being part of the platform.
That actually makes it an interesting way to look at it, is simply how are the contracts laid out? So you're right. In the Blood War series that I write with Doug Burby, our contract says we both own 50% of that IP. In this world that I'm working right now with a bunch of authors, the only contract was that we agreed to all support each other and run with it. So all of us own our individual IP. The only thing we're, quote, sharing is the concept of this world and a few NPCs that we have to agree not to break. But there is no contract with each other in how we write it. It just has to, we had basic things. It had to be relatively clean, no on-screen sex. It had to have a couple of the main NPCs that would float through all the books. And other than that, it was up to you. So that's
like consistent branding.
What?
Yes. Consistent branding.
So what basically you said is you guys agree to support, promote each other, and consistent branding.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean it's published by the same publishing imprint, or would you each indie publish it as well?
We each indie published it. Now, one of the interesting things that they said that part of the agreement is everybody had to get their covers from the same cover designer. And the cover designer basically said, this is how we're doing it. So even though your characters and names changed, if you look at the covers, you can tell they're absolutely a series, even though the author is different on every single book. Think of some of the big Western stuff. You would always know they were always within that Western series, even though there were multiple authors. That's literally what we're doing. And so it's very cohesive, but we all own our IPs.
So
Yeah,
do you tie them together on like the Amazon page as a series, or how do the readers find that?
It's all listed on Amazon page as a series, which was an act of God because Kindle is not exactly helpful in some aspects. But yeah, no, they're all listed.
So actually, I got a question there. Maybe this is the wrong place for it, but when it comes to different authors and different publishers, I wasn't aware that you could list those as sequential books in the same series. I mean, usually the series has to be associated with a single account, which means that oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. Todd, we're gonna talk to you later, Mel.
I thought that was where the phrase "act of God" came into play.
Yeah, no, it was an act of God. If you go look up at my stuff on Amazon and look for my book Puppet Master, you will see that it is book like 10 of 12 or something, and then you'll see them all listed. So it's a really interesting way to do a shared world in that you're collaborating with a bunch of people, but you don't have the contracts and you don't have to worry about what you do in the shared world as long as you don't basically break the D&D rules. You know, wizard has to sleep each night and relearn his spells. Those are the rules. What spells you learn are up to you.
Okay,
that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, I wanted to touch on something that you had talked about, having the same designer design all the covers, because we did something similar in Eldros, but also a little bit different. Like we had different illustrators do the picture on the front, but we've got well, actually, I have it here. So we've got this
the frame.
The frame, is the exact same on every single book.
And that's a great way to do it.
Throwing that up there. And so like every single book might have a slightly different illustrator, but every single book has that, what we call a thuros. It's an archway that's part of the whole like history of the world. And each book, you can see the little symbol on the bottom has, based on which continent it's on, has a different symbol that represents that continent. So it helps the reader figure out which continent they're on, depending on which book they want to grab. Because
that's really a cool way to do it.
Yeah, so we put. I thought it was cool too. Like the five of us that originally started it, sort of like did a lot of brainstorming about how to make this accessible in the beginning. We didn't succeed on every point, but I liked that one. That one actually worked.
Well, I think you just hit on. I think you just hit on one of the things that can be very overwhelming from a fan perspective, particularly if you're a fan who comes in later into the series. Is you can get lost as a fan.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
So, and it sounds like you found definitely a way to address some of the cognitive geography.
Ooh, nice.
That's a good word.
Great.
Good pair words. So up to a point we have, as far as the branding has worked, there has been some struggling with new fans navigating where's the end point, right? Because we've literally got the founders each have a series that are all they're supposed to merge. We've got cohorts that work with each of the founders, and they'll have their own series that are generally ancillary to the main threads, but that's starting to get blurred. And so we have had a couple of folks even just ask the question, well, so where do I start? And our default answer is, if you take a look on Amazon, it's start with book 1, which is Todd's, and run with it from there, because it actually, the way this was architected, it seemed like a good starting point.
If I may, Quincy, to kind of add to that, like we did a sort of a big reorganization at the beginning of the year. And it just happened. It just kind of shook out that my particular continent story had a little more content to it. And we were kind of like, okay, let's give them enough of like one story, because pretty much every story starts with a different group of characters. And you can read it like story 1 of Noxanon, story 1 of Daemonon, story 1 of Pyronon. Those are the different continents. But you will be starting over every time. So we were thinking, it might be easier for the reader to have a good 3-book run before deciding to switch over. And so that was our latest idea at the beginning of the year, was to organize it that way.
So now, JR, you've co-authored with 2 different groups.
So I wrote my first series in the Tim Taylor Sleeping Legion universe. So I was writing characters that were sort of mentioned in passing, and I took them and made them a thing. So I played in his universe, and then I wrote a novel in the Galaxy's Edge universe, which is also which also wasn't mine. So as my understanding of what a shared world is, that would qualify. I've co-authored some stuff too.
Is a lot fewer. It's interesting because it came out around the same time as the Four Horsemen, but it's a lot fewer core authors, as the Four Horsemen put it.
Yeah, I've written in the Four Horsemen universe as well. I've written some short stories, although that's a lot easier to get away with because there's not as much details to keep right for very long. So playing with their yeah, I just mean like it takes a lot more attention to detail to co-author in an entire novel versus a short story. I think you have to keep certain plots and certain universal truths straight longer. Whereas short story, you're in and you're out. So, you only need a partial idea that fits within the world to make it work. Size doesn't matter in stories. So I think that does make a difference. I would count the novels I wrote, or in Tim's case, I wrote 4 novels, 2 novellas, and a short story in his universe, as opposed to just a short story. I will say that the Four Horsemen universe were very organized with their universe Bible. They gave me like 27-page document and said, as long as you don't break these rules, you're good. I understand the Bible's probably a lot longer now because this was when they were on the first 5 books.
Yeah.
So
they've tightened the screws a bit. I know the races got kind of a little away from them a bit. I'm not a problem. It was really cool. Everybody was contributing. But it became something they had to sort of grab the reins on and lock down. But I will say that successful with it.
Yeah. The one thing I think is important, though, no matter how you do your shared world, is you have to respect the source material, because if you don't like what originally came first, it's going to show, and the fans are going to hate it because they're reading it because, if you're a Star Wars fan and you're reading a Thrawn book, you're reading it because you love Star Wars. And if, Zahn hated Star Wars, it would show and the fans would. Go ahead, Doc.
I think you just hit on what the key problem Disney had with some of the Star Wars movies.
That's it exactly. They didn't respect the source material. And actually, as long as we're on the subject, Abrams had a history of that both with Star Trek and Star Wars.
And some fandoms are
Abrams respects Abrams, is my opinion.
It is.
Go ahead, Mel. You were going to say something?
Well, Star Wars is a great example of a shared universe. We know lots and lots and lots of people, and all of us in this chat know people who have written in the Star Wars universe across the board. And it's a great example of a shared universe and how it's easy to still find your own story to tell while still completely respecting the source material.
Yeah, respecting the universe that it's in.
Yeah. I mean, because I can tell you the very first Star Wars novella I read was Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster. Yep. And that was literally, I think, what started it for a lot of people was the idea of, wait, we can tell other stories outside of the original 3.
So there's another part of that with a shared universe. It's not just that the new creator has to respect the original IP. The original IP holder has to keep firm reins, because I think part of what doomed what is considered extended canon or the non-canon stuff, the what do they call it? The Legends books, the original stuff that now doesn't count.
Calls it. Yeah.
Right. The reason they had to do that was because Lucas just said yes to so much, and everybody wanted to hear about Han and Luke and Leia in the main group. So they had them in so many places that if you understood how the universe worked, he was here on Monday and there on Tuesday, and there's no way he could have gotten there in between. And so they said yes to so much that then contradicted each other. So there is some responsibility on the person who owns the IP to manage it true to their vision and not let it get away from them. And I think, it's easy to get excited with new ideas.
That, but I think if you look at the notion of success, the Uber fans, the people who became scholars of Star Wars, those folks would absolutely pick out those. Wait a minute, there's no way they could be in those 2 places. There's no way, right? But what I think holds true is that, because I read all of those novels right up until the Yuzon Vong, which is where I sort of checked out. But all of those novels that came up to that point, you felt like you were in the Star Wars galaxy far, far away, right? And there wasn't, not that I'm aware of or that I recall, there wasn't one that felt out of place. The short stories, all of the novels, regardless of author, they did respect the source material. Now you're right that you do need to have somebody sort of looking at the calendar, who's where, when, and that becomes important. The variation becomes when you get someone who writes underneath that banner, but doesn't either ever read the other source material or simply ignores it. And I think that becomes the glaring difference.
Yeah.
And it's easy for most people to see.
Yeah, I could agree with that. So
What
how
about
do you
you,
guys, when you're
Michael?
working?
I asked Michael.
She was asking if you had an opinion.
Well, you guys are right. I mean, you can feel it as a reader when the writer who's writing the tie-in isn't already a fan of the universe. Particularly when, like Quincy was saying, they're just phoning it in. And it's difficult sometimes from the writer's perspective, at least my perspective, to be able to keep up and read all of the canon that's gone before, so that I not only have the feel for it, but that I know where not to step on toes. And that's why generally when I work in canon, I work in something that I already love, because then I don't have to go back and read everything, because I already know how it should be.
I think though that's one of the main problems you do have with really big shared universes. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I've read Star Trek for years. We won't talk about the 50 Star Trek on my shelf. But the problem
only 50? I have like 200.
Yeah, no, I did actually finally get rid of a bunch of them simply because I moved a lot in my 20s. My friends, I had really good friends. I owe them lots because they moved lots of books. But the problem, I think,
don't worry, you'll pay it back. You're going to leave lots of books soon.
Oh, I know. I will be. Is that you have your key characters that you love: Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and then you have the side characters of Uhura, Sulu, and Chekhov, and they were great, but they never changed. And after a while, I think that's one of the problems you get, is that even though they have this really great character arc in the story, the next person who writes the next book doesn't pay any attention because the characters aren't allowed to change. And after a while, it gets boring. I want to see Kirk actually learn something. I want to see Picard learn stuff. I want to see change eventually. But I think that's why we get into trouble sometimes with a lot of the shared universes, is that you can't let the characters change, because then that breaks everybody else's stuff. And after a while, that's boring.
The way Anne explained it to me for the Star Trek universe was that you could do what you wanted, but everybody had to start and end in the same spot.
Exactly the same. Yep.
Character-wise.
It's great for 1 or 2 or 3 novels. You start doing 50 and you're like, dude, you've already made this mistake 5 times. You're supposed to be smart. How come you don't know this yet? Don't sleep with alien women. It's not that hard.
Once you go green, you never go back.
Is that a hard fast rule for all of us, or just Kirk?
I mean, I've met a few Marines. That's not a hard fast rule for everyone.
I don't know. Alien women don't do it for me.
What about alien dudes? I mean, there's a whole genre of blue-chested alien romance novels. So
I don't know. We should bring Erica on. We can debate that.
All right, we'll make that happen. All right, but in the meantime,
okay. Wait, shush. In the meantime, we are going to cut to our commercial, which is brought to us by the majority of the authors on the show who have a story in that anthology. Oh.
All right.
Oh, wait,
Storming beautiful... Come on, JR. That was your cue.
Awesome stories started by one kick-ass meme. It started as a joke. Storm Area 51, they said. They can't stop all of us, they said. But all laughter has stopped when the U.S. Air Force mobilized and pulled out the big guns. However, relentless mockery and derision by the media and the powers that be pushed the dweebs and alien enthusiasts too far. What else were they supposed to do? They said why not and showed up, determined to find out what secrets were hidden behind the walls of the clandestine government facility. Are you brave enough to buy this anthology today? If you are, find out what the government wants to keep hidden. Read Storming Area 51, a Bayonet Books anthology.
That's good.
Woohoo!
Right on.
Doc
Even
even
I
has
have
a story in
in
it.
that. Even I have a story in there.
It was a fun anthology to write for, trying to make it semi-realistic but weird at the same time.
Yeah, I regret that the FBI came and cockblocked us, because that could have been like, it could have been the Woodstock of our generation, and then the anthology would still be selling. But no, the FBI showed up on some poor dude's door, and now it stopped selling. I'm blaming them. You hear me, Mr.
It's all
G-Man?
the
We know what
fault.
you did.
The FBI has been cock-blocking many of people. I'm sure you can go stand in line with a group of other guys with that problem.
Yeah, but most of them have it coming.
I know. JR never did.
We're going to move right along, Doc, and get us back on track. We're talking about shared worlds and not erotica.
Story for
Erotica
another
break,
time.
Doc?
So, but speaking of that, what is the appeal of the shared world? See?
Well, from a
Erotica
fan perspective
appeal.
or a writer perspective?
Let's start with a fan
You
perspective,
pick.
because this is who our audience will be.
What?
I get more stories.
Yeah.
So I think it's going back home. I mean, because Mel, you're absolutely right. You don't see a lot of change in the characters over the course of a lot of these novels. Star Trek's a good example. Star Wars, a few others. But I'll use this, and I don't mean this as a bad example. In many respects, romance is the same way. In that romance, they're all very similar stories, but we read them because we love that house. We want to go visit that house. It's like being able to show up as an old friend, and you recognize everybody there, and you know that it's going to be the ending you want. And so I think there's a certain allure where, from a writer's perspective, yeah, it's kind of goofy that the characters don't change. But from a reader's perspective, it's going home. And I think that there's a real advantage to that. Once you actually have a fan base, frankly, that's, I think, what they expect, at least up to a point. Certainly. Go ahead.
There's been a lot of research on the fact that if romance, for example, that if you read about that first kiss, that first touch, that first intimate moment, you actually have the equivalent endorphins in your brain kick off that if it was happening to you. And so in many ways, it literally is a fix of feel good chemicals that hit your brain. And so when you do things with either romance, or for me as a teenager and in my 20s, Star Trek, because I wanted to go find a new planet. I wanted that new adventure of having something good happen, because that was one of the major things about most Star Trek novels, is there was usually a good ending. Or reading a lot of the TSR novels that I have up there, the good guys are going to win, because I wanted that endorphin kick. And as a fan, it's awesome, especially when you find an author you like who leads you into other authors that they're doing that same world, but I'm still going to keep getting that endorphin kick that I crave. It's a drug. We know it's a drug, but it's a legal one.
Well, there were neuro and psychological studies done in the last 5 years that show like people will. It started first with TV, and they were like, "Oh, look, it's actually relaxing, even if it's a horror movie, if it's one that you've seen multiple times." Mm-hmm. And then they were like, "Oh, look, the same thing applies to books." To which I was like, "No, really? Come on, books existed longer than movies for a reason." Don't get me into that.
There's another aspect for the shared worlds that are not like Star Trek, where it's all about the main characters, and that's the scavenger hunt that readers get to go on. Because if you're in a big universe, you're going to see some of the main characters from Todd's story, as an example, completely. Maybe they're going to show up in Quincy's, and you get to spot your favorites, and maybe they're being clandestine, or maybe they're being blatant. But
in fact, they are.
Oh my God, that's my favorite character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually going to touch on almost exactly the same thing, Michael. I think that's extremely astute. Like one of the things that we play with a lot in Eldros is actually having cameo appearances from main characters from one storyline into a different storyline. And I mean, I know as a reader, and I suspect other readers just get such a kick out of that. Like, you know, they're reading about Relin, which is one of Quincy's characters, and going on his adventure, and all of a sudden, for one brief, 4-paragraph moment, Kyvan the Unkillable shows up. It's like, oh, cool. It's, Brad Pitt showed up in this movie, that wasn't about Brad Pitt. I mean, like that kind of thing, I think really gets people's.
Well, and then the readers are like, hey, did you spot so-and-so? No,
Yeah.
man, I didn't. But I did spot this person. Oh, really? Oh, man, I missed it. And like I said, it's almost like collecting cards.
Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, I know for me, when I was growing up, the reason that I would get into, I loved Dragonlance, and I read a little bit of Forgotten Realms, and I would get into two things. One, the world was really important. I mean, I love the characters, but going back to the world where there were these types of dragons and that type of lore and all that stuff, it felt like kind of coming home. It felt like this familiar ground that I wanted to come back to. And then also, like, I found myself developing a taste for different writers' styles. There were some writers in Dragonlance that I did not like. And, but then every time there was like a Margaret Weiss book or something like that, I'm like, oh gosh, I got to read that one. That's so, I mean, I think it helped develop my taste as well in reading.
Well, and it's not just the characters. It's the set pieces, the Inn at the Last Home.
Yeah.
We all loved going back to the Inn at the Last Home.
Yep. Even after they blasted it out of the tree,
Wait, is that
not my fault?
Yeah, sorry, spoiler.
Not at this point.
You ruined it for me.
40 years down the road, a bit of a spoiler there.
I did not blow it up. Let the record show. I get blamed for enough explosions.
I'm just saying that was what her lawyer told her to say.
I was going to say it's been 40 years, and I still love playing Kinders because they were just awesome.
Yes.
Because Kinders are perfection.
So do you think there's any downside or dangers of a shared world, both from a reader or a writer's perspective?
Oh, sure. Some writers suck.
Damn!
Okay,
Give
it to me straight.
Outstanding. Oh my goodness.
Everybody, my best friend.
God love
Well,
I bet people
but
never
right.
wonder why now.
And that isn't necessarily true, because
some writers
Chelsea Quinn Yarbo, I have met her. She is absolutely wonderful. She is a fascinating woman. She has done so much for sci-fi. I cannot stand her writing voice. She has some of the most fascinating plots. I cannot stand her writing voice, and I do not know why. I need to go back and try again, because I've tried multiple times over like 30, 40 years.
You're going to get yourself grounded.
Yeah, well.
I might know a con she's going to as a guest of honor. You're going to get yourself in trouble.
Well, like I said, I've met her, and I love her. There is just something about her writing voice that I can't get into, and it has nothing to do with her, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but all of us as readers run into certain authors that we just don't click with, and we can't always even tell you why, because we like the story, we like the characters, just you put it down and you don't want to pick it up, and you can't tell why. But that's also one of the biggest advantages of the shared world, is like Todd said, you get to try these other authors that maybe you would not have picked up. And yeah, some of them you may go, they aren't for me, I'm not interested. And others you're going to go, oh my gosh, I love this person's voice. What else have they written? And that gets you sales on your other stuff, which makes my insurance company very, very happy, because then I can pay them.
Well, and that's the neat thing that we've run into. I recently was over a cruise in December. I actually read all of the books I hadn't read so far in our series. And the one thing that occurred to me was that there was a distinct style for pretty much every writer. No two were the same. They were different voices. And it occurred to me that we are going to have fans who absolutely don't like one voice. I mean, they may not like my stuff, but they love Todd's. They may not like Marie's stuff, but they love mine. And I think that as you know, as one of the IP owners, I think you have to not only accept that but embrace it. Is that it's a shared IP. Ultimately, should, if you have enough people involved, have something for just about everybody, at least in that genre. So it kind of works in your favor. We've actually been talking recently about how to actually list the books in Amazon, what keywords and where to target. And we've decided we're getting more granular. Marie's stuff leans a little more towards horror and gothic. So we're going to sort of target that side of things. Todd's,
which is so weird because she's such a sweet, bubbly person.
I know, right?
She's the nicest person.
That's why you should be afraid of the pretty, happy people.
Some of the horror elements that she can come up with just make you shiver. She's
got a dark side.
Yeah, she can throw the ick in there for sure.
Absolutely. So my stuff's got mystery. Todd has the sword and sorcery. It's important, I think, for an IP if you're really going to blow it up to have all of it, right? Shoot for that, but then actually learn how to manage it. That's the real trick.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to kind of put some context too. So we've got 4 founders in Eldros. So those are the people that essentially manage what happens in the Bible. Like everybody else gets. Ship? I'm sorry, what's that?
Steer the ship.
Steer the ship. Yep. Steer the ship, creatively speaking, and then of course, logistically speaking as well. But just to kind of like what Mel was talking about earlier about the rules of the world. We're the ones that establish that and or ratify something if somebody else comes up with something really, really cool, which we are always open to. And then we've got about a dozen what we call cohort authors. So, I mean, all told, we got about 16 people writing in this world doing their various stories. So it's a decent size at this point. Probably not the largest out there by a long shot, but still quite a few people.
I guess one of the questions that comes up is, let's say somebody does something that, quote, breaks the rules, but it really works. Have you figured out how to go back and either give them a pass or say, well, it used to be this way, but it isn't this way anymore?
Yes. We've run into that a couple of times, and kind of my whole stance on it is, if you break the world, you have to come up with a really good reason why, and it's a one-time thing. It's like this shifted here, and like, I mean, so that kind of like what you were saying before about, you can start with Kirk and Spock here, and you can go through all this stuff, but at the end they got to come back to where they were before. One of the things that I told one of my cohorts when she had this creature called the World Breaker, and I was like, it's cool if you've got a character or a creature or a monster that's going to end the world, as long as they don't. like they can have the capacity to do it, so you can like run right up to the cliff, but you can't go jumping over because, of course, we still need the world for everybody else, right? So that
Details.
I think that's what's that?
Details. Next thing you know, you're going to say people want to live.
Well, there is that.
Are you doing anything like, let's say your character does something impressive, causes a dormant volcano to erupt and blow its top? Are you letting then other authors down the road go from that point forward, saying, hey, this massive landscape thing has changed, this rule in the world has changed, you can now play with this? Or are you guys always leaving your world static?
Yeah, we are. In fact, we have meetings with the cohorts every 2 weeks. The founders work with their cohorts on their continents. And as a good example, so Jamie Ibsen is working on his second book. He's writing in my continent. And he's got a whole race of people that I let him run with. They're invading my kingdom, which I said from the get-go, I want to wreck Pelinon. That's the name of the kingdom.
I thought it was cool.
Right, yeah. So I'm going to wreck the whole thing.
I want to destroy my kingdom. Who wants the job? And Jamie's like, I'll do it.
I'll do it. Right, yeah. He was like first in line.
I met Jamie, and I could see him doing it with his sweet Canadian smile.
Oh, yeah. He's so polite. As
like
he
covered in maple syrup.
So then Todd has an idea for it's in your third book, dealing with vampires. So Ren the Traveler deals with vampires. And it occurred to me that, okay, I want to have these vampires escape. And when they do, they're literally going to invade, and they're going to raise a city, an entire seaport. And in Jamie's second or third, it'll be his second book, his characters will actually see this city burning across a river. And Haley's character, and then she's only like, her book isn't published yet, but in her second book, that character is going to actually end up in this city during these events. So we're actually being very careful.
See, I find that much more interesting than the whole reset it back to the beginning each time.
Yeah, we are interweaving this, and we're doing like essentially what Marvel did. I mean, to be honest, we tried to Marvel this project on what Marvel did with the cinematic universe leading up to Endgame. Is you have all these
Civil War
different...
sucked. I don't care. It sucked.
Only if you read the original comic book. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I think that it does require that we keep pretty meticulous track of the timeline. Like, if somebody says, I want to write a book, we got to say, when do you want to write it? Because, like, with that example with the volcano, it's like, in this particular book, there's a volcano here. And in this particular book, there's a big, huge crater in the ground. So, I mean, like, things like that, as well as with the, with the main characters. But I think, I mean, the cool thing is that, like Quincy was saying, the founders meet regularly, like a lot. And so if there's something going on with the meta plot, and we have established from the very beginning, we are the rulers of the meta plot. Like this big thing this cataclysm that's going to happen at the end of book 5 or 6, or whenever we decide to do it for each of our storylines, respectively. The cohort authors can choose to be a part of the meta plot in as large or as tiny a way as they want to. Like, they could go and just take a chunk of the kingdom way off over here and never have to touch the meta plot whatsoever, which gives them a lot more freedom with their story. But if they want to be part of the meta plot and those, sort of main characters, the Brad Pitt storyline or whatever it is, then they have to communicate a lot with us just to make sure. And honestly, you would think that it would be, or at least I would have thought that it would have been a lot of like butting heads. It's like, oh, well, I want to do this, and well, you can't do that. And it really has not been in the creative aspect. It has not been at all. Everybody's just been, oh, well, you can't do this because this volcano blew this up. It's like, oh, really? Oh, I can work that into my story. I can have somebody who's like a lava walker. I mean, like, they just get really excited about it. And it's been a joy.
Yeah.
Todd, having met all your co-authors, I think, in person, Quincy can correct me if I'm wrong, because he's probably been there when I've met most of them.
I think
some of that is
certainly the founders.
Of the founders, yeah. I think you got exceptionally lucky because you have an exceptionally good group of people that you're working with.
It fits really well together. It really does. I mean, like, we all complement each other. Yeah. Oh, that includes Quincy? Never mind.
Yeah, Quincy's like, oh yeah, we did. Like, he's not one of those exceptionally nice, genuine people.
Well, truth be told, it depends on who you ask.
I don't ask, I know you. I don't need to ask. I've seen the evidence.
Well, you got the real me.
Yeah, Quincy was one of the wonderfully genuine surprises coming into Eldros, where he and I clicked like pretty quickly, pretty early on, and we just really enjoy. I mean, like, I probably brainstorm more with Quincy.
I think we could probably do an entire behind the scenes episode with you
guys. All right,
bring it on. But yeah,
be careful, guys. She's going to want that maple syrup again.
Last time it got into everything, it was bad.
You can actually wash keyboards in a dishwasher. You know that, right?
I don't know. I use a laptop, so my keyboard is attached. And we're not going to take it anywhere near a dishwasher. So, but kind of just we're hitting the end of almost an hour here. Clearly, there is so much more we could talk about. And if you are a fan watching, please comment with more questions, and we can do another one. We can even bring back the same for people, because I know how to convince them to do things. I love how everybody's nodding their head that's seen me in person.
Yep. I can't say no to you.
So, what shared world is it? Oh, you're so sweet. So, what is your, before we go, our last question is going to be, I'm going to give you guys all a chance to shout out the shared worlds that you've worked in and where you are. But what is your either your first or your favorite shared world. And we're going to start with Michael J. Allen because he's been quiet, and so I'm going to throw him under the bus or in front of the firing line.
I'm trying to be respectful. Favorite of
You are
the 4 I've
always
written in, or favorite in general?
Either. You get to answer whichever one.
Of the 4 I've written in, I'm going to say Starflight was my favorite because Starflight was the game back in the 80s that inspired me to become a writer. But at the same time, I'm in the middle of building 2 of my worlds into shared worlds. So they're probably going to take over from Starflight.
Oh, cool. That is going to be an interesting process. And I want to bring people in so that we can do some episodes on like how that develops. See, this is what happens when you get me at night after I haven't slept.
You know, you guys did a panel with me about Crossways. Well, there's been a big push from the readers. So we're looking at opening up the Wayman Chronicles world, which is like 11 universes to start with.
Yes.
And then, of course, I've got some collaborative requests for the binary online sci-fi lit RPG trilogies. So
wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to build the Bibles the right way to do open world.
When you figure that out, share it, please, because that's going to be the worst part of world creating is figuring out a coherent way to record it.
Yeah, and then really a Bible for 11 universes? Holy shnikes.
Well, I'm using a program service called World Anvil, which allows me to put timeline worlds.
Yeah.
So that I can have a book series and I can all the descriptions at a specific timeline, and then another timeline with new descriptions that allows me to adapt the world to volcanoes and whatnot. Not that I have a volcano that I'm thinking about, but in general. So it's been a great resource, and of course I've got readers in there helping me build. But until it's ready, it's still private.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's a huge project. I'm impressed, man.
He's always up to something. How about you, Todd?
I gotta go with Eldros Legacy right now. Now, I don't think I've worked in as many shared worlds as the rest of the people here, but I did the Hearthstone trilogy, and that was pretty much just a co-author situation. So, I mean, we were sharing the world, but it's nothing like the project that we're working on with Eldros Legacy. And there's so much like blue sky above us that we can go and explore, and it just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that's my favorite right now. But again, I don't have as many to choose from, so it was pretty easy call for me.
What about you, Quincy?
First wrote in actually the Outlander, which was the character created by the Aradio brothers. First appeared in Heavy Metal magazine back in like 2003, and I got to write a novel for them in their world, which was a really neat process. That was published by Wordfire. They have the rights back. We're going to probably re-release it. I got to talk to them about that. My favorite has to be Eldros Legacy, just because I've had so much input on the shaping of the world. But I as a close second, I guess I'd have to say working with Adelheid in his Last Wars universe, the Tovok series with Reclaiming Honor. That was a really neat process, and I love those books. I mean, as far as writing, those are probably 3 of the best I've written. But he had a lot of input. But it's hard to say. It is, but ultimately, first pick is going to be Eldros no matter what, just because we're doing so much with it.
How about you, JR? And then we'll go to my best friend.
So I guess for me, it would have to be the Sleeping Legion universe, because it was the first nonfiction that I'd written intentionally. So, and before I wrote the books that I wrote in the series in that universe, I was actually just an Uber fan. When I first got back from Iraq, I couldn't read because it hurt my head, and that's where I found the Kindle, and you could magnify it. So his was one of the first books I found when I was able to read again. And so I ended up working with a guy named Hans, who's sadly no longer with us, but we actually wrote the World Bible from the books in an attempt to make the wiki page for that universe. And so let me tell you, that was a lot involved in that. And wiki pages are a lot harder to manage than I thought if you're computer dumb. but it was fun to write in it because like Tim
Wait,
is
you're
not a veteran. Yeah, I know you're shocked. Tim isn't a veteran, so some of the things that he got wrong were, just like I use this example. He didn't realize that to the grunt that carries the rifle, yes, they all might look the same, but this one is mine, and it's slightly different enough with the imperfections and the wear and tear that it's mine. And so I was able to incorporate some of that in there. We found some issues where he changed what they like the nomenclature for various items, and I was able to give him, within the parlance of military logic, which is very illogical most of the time, justification in his own universe for why it happened, and then I wrote stuff in. So it was a lot of fun playing in the world and helping shape it while being taught, some of the craft in general. So for me, I guess because it was first, it was, favorite. I really am proud of the Reservist, which was in the Galaxy's Edge universe, but I don't know. I feel like learning how to write academic papers that I did as a historian and turn them into novels people actually want to read, which I did for Tim, was such a fun learning experience that's going to hold a special place in my heart.
How about now we're back to my favorite, because I am biased. Mel.
I have to say it's been a very interesting learning experience writing in this shared world, just in how it works and the fact that we have so many people involved that are at different stages in their career. And that's been one of the really, some of the people I'm writing with are Sarah Noski and Jamie Davis. I think both of them have over 100 books. Their names are multiple bestsellers, everything else. So it's been really interesting because we also have a couple people who are writing their first book or their second book. And that's just been an interesting way to see how different processes work. All in all, my biggest issue is I can't write as fast as I want to write. I have like 5,000 books to write. And apparently my butt doesn't like sitting in a chair that many hours a day. I can't understand why.
Well,
so Doc, I'm going to bring this home for us because we are at the hour mark. And when I started planning this episode, and then Doc took over because that's what Doc does, we had mentioned specifically Todd Noxonson. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Todd, are you messing with me?
Noxanon. That's the continent.
That's his continent.
This
he named himself after a continent tonight.
Oh,
well, I was just matching Quincy. Quincy threw up Daemonon, so I had to let my flag colors fly. So,
well, he had to do that because otherwise, he and Michael sound like siblings.
He's turning it around. Oh man. Okay, it's on.
Oh, hold on. You guys are solo. Okay, now I've got you on the screen. Now show people.
Wait. I can do it. How's that? Team Daemonon.
Cool.
Wait.
Okay, now Todd.
All right, Todd. Hold on, Todd. Todd, you got to wait for me to get you on there.
Okay.
Todd, you got to give me a second to get you on the screen.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
To your left. You're right. Your other left. There you go.
Doc, I don't know why it's not. Doc, don't touch anything. You're breaking it.
There it is.
I would do it, and then Doc would try to do it at the same time.
Really cool.
Oh.
Okay, am I done?
Yes, you're done.
I don't need to see your back anymore.
All right, so Todd had mentioned.
Gosh. I'm just wondering how much time, like Quincy's butt and my butt, were in the camera.
I mean, I'm not saying that's why Doc was doing it that way, but I'm not saying it either. All right.
Maple syrup.
Oh, so she wants butts and maple. You know what? Not that kind of podcast. We're going to move right along. So, Todd,
you're not equipped for that.
Probably not. I'd need a lot more therapy for that. So one of the things Todd, when he reached out and we were doing the prep for the show, was he'd like to give some of the listeners that stuck through it. And yes, we realized that there were some tech issues. Doc and I are both working very hard to fix our signal issues. So hopefully it'll be a lot clearer going forward. We've determined what the problem is. And so we've got solutions. But Todd, you had mentioned you wanted to do some, Doc, you got issues. I'm just saying, right? Like we all know this. So Todd wanted to give some giveaways. So Todd, can you tell us so what you were thinking and
Yeah. Well, I have to give credit to my assistant. She's like, "Do you want to give away some books while you're in this podcast? Do they want you to give away some books?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So she worked up this thing. So yeah, anybody who is interested in starting the Eldros Legacy, the multi-author shared world mega epic fantasy that we're all writing, and I think I mentioned how many people are actually writing it.
Me, I want it.
Well, just email me at Todd, don't forget the period, faunastock@gmail.com. It's right there. So, take a screenshot of the screen and then just email me and just say Blasters and Blades giveaway. And if you're one of the first 3 people to email me, then we'll send you a free ebook. Or rather, I should say, by we, I mean Becca will probably send you.
I can attest.
And next we've got Michael J. Allen, who was also going to do some giveaway. So if you wanted to speak on what you were thinking, Michael, and I'll zoom this in so you can get your delirious scribbles.
So Todd started the ball off, and I love giving away books. And I figured that everybody here is going to be giving away part of their shared universe, which means that the readers are going to have to wait. So I decided to go with the first book in my completed pentology. That way they not only can read.
Aw.
Thank you, Doc. So yeah, the first 3 that email me at scribbler@deliriousscribbles.com, come chat with me a little bit via email. The blind guy's a little lonely. I'll give away ebooks.
I mean, I showed up at your house and you called the cops, so clearly you're not that lonely.
There are levels of lonely. It sounded like you brought.
Says that.
JR, it could have been.
That's genius.
He's lonely, just not that lonely. Or it could have been the smell.
Well, it could have been the sound of the
distinctly buckle. Of infantry, JR.
That's the one. There you go.
There we go. Quincy, I wanted to get the one with your little code.
I'm actually going to give away a trade paperback of the first book in my portion of Eldros Legacy. It's called Seeds of Dominion. Book 2 should be out this summer. And I'm also going to give away with that. So it'll be an autographed copy. Plus, we do challenge coins for each of the continents. So I'll send you one of those. You can see both sides there. It's bit.ly/fistful of silver. That's where you'll actually you got to put your email in there. You'll get a free short story for it, which is actually Rellen's first story. That's where it all starts, is with that short story. The QR code should work too. So once I get those emails, I will reach out to you and get your address, and I promise not to stalk you. And then I'll send you the autograph copy. What?
Where's the fun in that?
Give you a little extra. Oh, sorry.
Emails only, Quincy, because you give an address, JR shows up at your door.
It's too late, man. Now it's done. Man, I screwed it up again.
So I wanted to give a little extra boost to what Quincy's offering here. That challenge coin, there were only 100 made of those. And as far as I can tell, Quincy may only have 50 of them left. So those are collector's items, the first run of the collector's coins for Eldros Legacy. So that's really freaking cool. I didn't do that with mine because I only have 4 left. So get Quincy's while you can. They're not going to be around forever.
And Cisca, you get a free one.
Yay! I'm loved.
I'll have them with me at Dragon Con, and there's you and JR and a few other folks will get one.
You know what, Cisca? I'll make sure you get a Noxanon one as well, because I can't have Quincy outdoing me when it comes to that. So he'll probably be the one that delivers it to you.
Okay. And last but not least, we've got the lovely Mel Todd. Oh, let me get the junk off the bottom real quick. So what were you thinking, Mel?
Go ahead and send me an email. First 3 people send me an email at sales@badashpublishing.com. I will send you book 1 of my Caleb Chronicles. It's a completed series. There are 5 novels and 4 novellas that are wide. But if you say, hey, I want to try this, I'll send you book 1 for free.
Cool.
Woohoo! Free book.
It's hard to beat.
Free books is good. Hard to beat. So as we bring this to a close, I guess I can offer some free e-copies of the book that started the universe I wrote in. So I have some codes that I can give you for a copy of Legionnaire, which I didn't write though, which is by Jason Onspach and Nick Cole, if you want to try that universe. And as we do that, we have, if we can get all of you guys, and we'll go in order as you appear on the screen, how they can reach out to you. And as usual, all of that will be in the show notes. But Mel, can you tell us how they can find you?
You can find me at www.badash Books or Badash Publishing. They both do the same place. I'm on Facebook as Badash Books, Instagram. I might be playing around with TikTok, but unless you're really, really into book talk, it's probably not worth the effort. And I have got a ton of cons this year. So if you go to my website, you will get my newsletter, which has a free short story in it every time I send it, which is twice a month. And you will find out all of the places I'm going to be this year, including Greece.
Oh, cool. I'm jealous.
I can't wait. 2 weeks in Greece, 1 week on a boat.
Babysit.
Get her a t-shirt.
I'll
better than a t-shirt. I want yarn.
Okay. So we know the price at which Doc can be bought, yarn. Quincy, can you tell listeners and readers and viewers how they can find you on the Wild Wild interwebs?
Yeah, best place right now is going to be quincyallen.com. That's my website. There's a newsletter, sign up for that. It's got my books listed, the whole series, everything, all the crap I've written. Also Amazon and my author page. That is got everything. Yeah, that's got everything. And that's pretty much it. Those two, that's where I focused. I kind of pulled back from all the other social media because I'm old and I couldn't take it anymore.
Fair. And I just want you to know, we just got a call from our lawyers, and we are contractually obligated to tell you his books are not crap. His publisher will deal with him later. But yeah, they're good. We promise.
Todd, thank you.
Well, lawyers scare me. So, Todd, can you tell listeners
easily?
Maybe. Todd, we've already had to deal with lawyers when we did our rebranding because we apparently stepped on some.
That moment.
We stepped on some IP that we didn't know was dormant, but they were still protecting with certain walking tanks, and that's all I can say. But Todd, can you tell listeners and viewers?
Yeah, once again, I figured out how to change my name thing. So I've been copying everybody who's been doing cool things. This time I copied Mel by putting my website right there. That's where you can find me, toddfonestock.com. So that'll give you everything that I do.
Damn it, you outdid me.
Okay, and Michael J. Allen, go ahead. Michael, where can they find you on the internet?
Nothing.
Well, Cisca, did you want to finish? Okay.
I think you've been told.
All right. So they can. You guys can find me on my broken website. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can find me at my currently broken, but I'm too blind to fix website, deliriousscribbles.com. Also in the show notes, there should be a link to my Discord server where I am spending a good amount of time. And you can get that same link off the website. While I've got the floor, I'd like to say that I want the next Blood Wars book, Quincy, just the record, and the next Luck book, Mel.
I promise it's on the list. I swear to God.
I'm at 80,000 words. Does that help?
It does help, yes. And I know you guys, well, somebody's waiting for sequels for me too, so I understand.
I was going to say Faded Luck will be out in audio probably end of this month, early next month.
Oh, Faded Luck's really good. Oops.
Well, and I finally got another narrative for the Ashes of Raging Water, so I'm hoping to have that out here soon.
Nice. So, and as usual, you can find me on all the places as JR Handley, the letters. It's really easy to spell, I promise. And this is the part of the interview where we remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part, people. And on that note, you can find us as a podcast on the interwebs. I promise we're there. We answer emails. All hate mail can go to Doc Cisca at blastersandbladespodcast.com. But for the rest of the good stuff, you can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Remember, all hate mail is directed to Cisca. You can find us on the Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. You can find us on our website, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. These podcasts don't pay for themselves. Or you could support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly intoxicated, because after tonight's interview, they need booze, people. They will drink, though, until their liver surrenders. And Doc's facial expression says it all. She's not a quitter.
Never surrender.
All right, Doc, bring us home.
I mean, I can go with more. I have more Army slogans. I can go with death before dismount. I mean, they were all guns.
You know what? I'm going to shut my mouth before I get in trouble. And go on, Doc. Bring us home.
I'm not going to go with my platoon motto after that one. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee Nick, one day we promise we'll let him out of the closet. And J.R. Handley, I'm Doc Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, enjoying our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, of course, picking on J.R. because who doesn't like that? And pineapple on pizza.
Harris